Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling DISC, a really useful framework for understanding, the nuances of human behavior, why we all tick a little differently.
Yeah, it's grounded in pretty normal emotions and just those fascinating variations in how we naturally respond to things.
Exactly. And you've sent in a fantastic array of sources covering everything from like practical communication tactics based on DISC
Yeah.
to the history of the theory, its applications in today's workplace remote teams included, which is super relevant.
Right, very much so. And even how it connects with emotional intelligence.
So our goal for this deep dive really is to move beyond just knowing the basics.
Absolutely. We want to actually extract some, actionable insights from all this material.
Yeah, equip you not just with a deeper understanding of maybe your own patterns, but also give you a clear lens to see and understand the people around you.
And hopefully that translates into real improvements in how you communicate, how you collaborate, at work, but also just in life generally.
Okay, let's get into it then. The DISC model, it essentially boils down to four primary behavioral styles: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness.
Often just called DIS and C, right?
Now picture a simple axis.
Uh-huh.
Horizontally, you've got those who get their energy mainly from external interactions, extroverts on one side.
Uh-huh. And on the other end, those who recharge more through internal reflection, the introverts.
And then vertically.
That axis represents focus. So at the top, you have people driven primarily by tasks, getting things done, achieving results.
Okay.
And at the bottom, those who prioritize people, relationships, harmony.
Ah, I see. And there's also that idea of pace, right? Reserved versus fast pace.
Exactly. Some tend to be more reserved, preferring a, let's say, slower, more systematic approach, while others are distinctly fast-paced, often looking for shortcuts, quick solutions, immediate action.
Right. And this is really key. I think none of us are just one pure style. Like I'm not just a D or you're not just an S.
Mhm. No, absolutely not. We're all a unique blend, a combination of these four tendencies, but usually one or maybe two will feel more dominant. That's sort of our comfort zone.
And knowing that personal blend gives you real insight into your own like automatic responses and preferences.
Yeah, but maybe even more powerfully when you start to recognize the dominant styles in other people.
Then you can consciously adapt how you interact.
Exactly. Adapt how you interact for, well, much smoother and more effective connections. It just works better.
Okay, so that's the basic framework. But what's interesting, you mentioned the history. This isn't actually brand new, is it?
Not at all. It feels very current and practical, but the theory itself, its roots go back almost a century.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the initial framework came from William Moulton Marston's 1928 book, Emotions of Normal People.
Emotions of normal people. Okay.
And in it, he proposed four fundamental behavioral styles. Now, he labeled them slightly differently: dominance, inducement, submission, and conscientious.
Ah, so dominance and conscientious were there, but inducement and submission instead of influence and steadiness. Interesting.
Right. And his core idea was that our behavior is shaped by two things: how we view our environment, basically, favorable or antagonistic, supportive or challenging,
Okay.
and then how we tend to respond to that environment, actively taking charge or more passively adapting to it.
So perception and response. That makes sense.
Mm.
Did Marston create the DISC test we know today then?
Actually, no. His work was mainly theoretical. He laid the groundwork, the foundation, but he didn't develop a specific assessment tool himself.
Gotcha.
And it's fascinating to see how his labels evolved. Like you pointed out, inducement became influence.
Yeah, inducement sounds a bit manipulative, maybe?
It could carry that connotation, couldn't it? Whereas influence really captures the more positive aspects like persuasion, connection, enthusiasm, which fits better with how we understand that style today. Same with submission becoming steadiness. Submission sounds quite passive.
Whereas steadiness implies reliability, support, consistency.
Exactly. Language really does shape how we perceive these things.
So Marston laid the theory. Who picked it up from there?
Well, the sources mention Walter Clark, who did work on personality adaptations, building on Marston's ideas.
Oh.
And then John Geyer really played a key role in actually developing and popularizing DISC assessments, especially for the business world.
So Geyer was the one who really brought it into the workplace.
Pretty much. It was a journey, from this academic concept to something practical that teams could actually use. Each person built on the previous work, refining it, creating usable tools.
All right, so we've got the history. Let's really dig into the styles themselves now.
Hmm.
Let's kick off with dominance, the D. What are the defining characteristics?
Okay, the D style. Fundamentally, they're driven by results. Think keywords like result-oriented, focused on goals, direct, competitive,
Takes charge.
takes charge, absolutely. They often get associated with the color, RED, think fire, heat, urgency. They see the big picture, the macro vision, and they can get really impatient with delays.
Why the impatience?
It really stems from that core drive. They just want to see progress, achieve outcomes quickly. Anything slaying that down is frustrating.
Okay, makes sense. So how does that translate into communication? What's a conversation like with a strong D?
Expect it to be pretty direct, often quite one way. They tend to state opinions as facts.
Oh, okay.
And they can have relatively short attention spans, especially if the chat isn't clearly leading somewhere productive. They might interrupt if they feel things are dragging.
Focus on the what, not the how or why so much.
Exactly. Big picture, achievements, plans, goals. They might struggle a bit to grasp viewpoints based purely on feelings without, clear facts backing them up. It's less about why someone feels a certain way, more about what are we going to do about it.
Got it. Direct, action-oriented, bottom line. So what motivates them? What gets a D person fired up?
New challenges are big. Anything that lets them achieve something tangible, setting and hitting ambitious goals, being in charge, making decisions, having an impact.
And recognition.
Yes, but often direct verbal recognition or tangible rewards that clearly acknowledge their accomplishments. Less fuzzy stuff, more concrete results.
And their biggest fear. What are they trying to avoid?
Losing control. Losing autonomy. That's the big one. If they can't control the situation or the outcome, they can't drive the results they want. That's fundamentally against their nature.
Okay. So in a work setting, what contributions do they typically make and what kind of jobs suit them?
Well, they're natural leaders, often very decisive. They value time frames, results. They're not afraid to challenge the status quo either, which can lead to innovation.
So roles like?
Think CEO, entrepreneur, maybe a high-powered attorney, positions where they have authority and can directly influence outcomes.
And how about remote work? How does that affect a D style? Seems like it could be tricky without being physically present to direct things.
They'll likely embrace the challenge of it, still focused on results. But yeah, there are pitfalls. They might move too quickly, make decisions without fully bringing the remote team along.
Communication style might be an issue.
It can be. Digital communication can come across as even more abrupt or cold than in person. And the delays of asynchronous communication, that can be really frustrating for them.
Right.
And sometimes, in their drive for efficiency, they might accidentally overlook the personal needs or well-being of their remote colleagues, just focused on the task.
Interesting points. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the I style influence. What's the vibe here?
Influence is all about people. Connection. Think people-oriented, social, enthusiastic, optimistic, persuasive, spontaneous.
A real contrast to the D.
Definitely. They often get linked with yellow sunshine, brightness, happiness, fun. They're natural connectors, and they really gain energy and validation from positive interactions with others. They kind of live through others' views of them, in a way.
So how do they communicate? If D is direct in one way, what's I?
They thrive on interaction. They're often eloquent, use lots of gestures, facial expressions, very open with personal experiences, anecdotes.
It's the storyteller?
Could be. They enjoy participating in almost any conversation and really value the social side of meetings or team stuff. They actively try to include others.
Sounds like they can really energize a group. What motivates them? What do they respond to?
Social interaction is huge. Recognition, approval from others, opportunities for creativity and freedom, a positive atmosphere.
Public praise.
Oh yeah, public recognition, maybe being the center of attention sometimes. A fun, stimulating environment is key.
And their main fear? If D fears loss of control, what about I?
Rejection. That's the big one for them. Because that social connection and positive affirmation are so important, the idea of being disliked or excluded is a major concern.
Okay, so in the workplace, what strengths do they bring? What roles suit them?
Often very creative problem solvers. They're great at encouraging and motivating others, keeping the team spirit positive. They generally avoid conflict, though.
Good networkers.
Excellent networkers and relationship builders. Think careers like sales, marketing, customer service, PR, maybe even entertainment. Roles with lots of interaction where they can use that persuasive, engaging energy.
And remote work for the I style. That lack of direct social contact, Must be tough.
It definitely can be a challenge. They often appreciate the flexibility, sure, but they need to find new ways to connect actively.
So they might initiate virtual coffee chats or something.
Exactly. Their natural positivity can be a real asset in rallying remote teams. They might be the ones making sure socializing still happens, experimenting with communication tools. But yeah, working totally alone for long stretches can be really stressful and draining for them.
Right. That makes total sense. Okay, moving on to the S's style steadiness. What are the core traits here?
Steadiness is really about teamwork, harmony, stability. Think team players, harmonious, inclusive, loyal, patient, good listeners, supportive. They really value stability and tend to avoid conflict.
Often associated with green, right? Calm, dependable.
That's the one. Their communication style is usually more indirect, more casual than, say, a D. They don't tend to show strong emotions outwardly. They might seem reserved, speak a bit more slowly.
But passionate about things they care about.
Oh, definitely. Especially areas of expertise or demonstrating their loyalty. They are fantastic listeners, really good at encouraging others to talk.
So if you're communicating with a high S, what's the best approach?
Patience is key. Proceed logically at a measured pace. Ask specific, clear questions they appreciate clarity. And give them time to process and respond. Don't rush them.
Offer support.
Yes, provide reassurance and support. Actively ask for their opinions and then actually listen quietly. Providing precedents or examples helps reduce uncertainty for them. Emphasize fairness and give clear time expectations. They like to plan.
Got it. Calm, patient, considerate. What motivates an S? What are they looking for?
Stability and security are paramount. Supportive relationships, helping others, a harmonious environment where things are predictable. Feeling valued is important too. Consistency, routine, loyalty, commitment, those are big drivers.
And their fear. If D is loss of control and I is rejection.
For S, it's the loss of that security, usually triggered by big, sudden changes. They value the familiar, the predictable. Change can feel very destabilizing.
So in the workplace, what are their key contributions and suitable careers?
They are incredibly reliable, dependable, very patient, often the peacemakers on a team, loyal team players. They can be surprisingly good at multitasking, seeing tasks through meticulously.
Like roles in.
Healthcare, social work, maybe administrative support, any role needing patience, reliability, consistency, and a focus on supporting others.
And remote work for the S. How does that land?
Well, they often really miss the easy, informal collaboration of being physically together, that sense of team cohesion. On the plus side, maybe it's easier to say no online sometimes if they're feeling overloaded, but they thrive on clear, friendly, personal communication.
So a lack of check-ins could be bad.
Yeah, a lack of regular personal check-ins can make them feel quite isolated. They might also find adapting to new tech frustrating and initiating difficult conversations remotely. That can be really hard for them.
And a risk of burnout, maybe.
Definitely a risk. They might take on too much trying to support everyone, and it can be harder to see the impact of their work when they're isolated, which can be demotivating.
Okay, fascinating. Finally, let's hit the C-style conscientiousness. What defines them?
Conscientiousness is all about accuracy, quality, detail. Think detail-oriented, analytical, accurate, efficient, critical thinking. They often prefer working alone or with a small group of similarly focused people.
The BLUE style, right?
Yeah.
Calm, analytical, maybe like the C or police uniform rules. Order.
Exactly. Communication tends to be quiet, indirect, maybe more formal, cautious. They value data, evidence. They probably have the manual. They speak slowly, factually, very structured.
Not the first to jump into a meeting discussion.
Rarely. They prefer to listen, collect data, analyze, plan their contribution carefully. They want to be right. They tend to manage indirectly, maybe through policies or procedures.
Challenged by ambiguity.
Definitely. They like clear answers, precision. They prefer written instructions, and they'll probably confirm things in writing too.
So, communicating effectively with a C. What are the tips?
Focus on the key issues. Answer their questions calmly, carefully, with precision. Be thorough. Provide all the relevant info, the data, the supporting materials. Slow down your pace and listen very carefully to their questions. They'll be specific and thought out.
Got it. Facts, logic, thoroughness. What motivates a C style?
Standard procedures are good. Clear explanations, lots of facts and figures, opportunities to use their specialized skills and expertise. They like being the expert.
And their fears. What rattles a C?
Conflict or confrontation isn't comfortable. Situations needing quick decisions without all the data. Stressful. Being pushed into the spotlight or public promotion? not usually their favorite.
And underlying that.
A deep fear of being wrong, of making mistakes, of being criticized for their work, and also a fear of chaos or disorganized environments. They need structure and accuracy.
Okay, so in the workplace, their contributions and career paths.
Excellent in quality control roles, very obedient to rules and procedures, can be good peacemakers by focusing on objective facts, often become invaluable specialists, diplomatic in their own way through thoroughness.
Think roles like
Research, data analysis, engineering, maybe technical writing, accounting, anything requiring precision analysis and getting things right.
and remote work for the C. Seems like it might actually suit them quite well.
In many ways, yes. They often enjoy the independence, the quiet focus. They usually have the self-discipline needed.
Their attention to detail must be helpful remotely.
Hugely helpful, especially for figuring out resource needs or documenting processes for remote teams. And they generally don't need constant FaceTime to feel engaged. They might even take the initiative to address needed policies for remote work.
What potential downsides?
Well, they might be tempted to just do tasks themselves rather than delegate to ensure accuracy. Social interactions can feel like a distraction. They might assume everyone understood the initial, detailed information as well as they did.
Micromanaging risk.
Possibly, especially if they perceive a lack of thoroughness from others. And acknowledging feelings or the emotional side of collaboration can be harder remotely for them too.
Wow. Okay. So understanding these styles is one thing, but you mentioned adapting.
Exactly. And recognizing these distinct tendencies is really just the starting point, isn't it? The real power of DISC comes when you get why it's important to consciously adapt your communication style.
To connect better with whoever you're talking to.
Right, because if you don't, it's so easy for misunderstandings to happen or hurt feelings, confusion, even conflict, just because you're talking past each other.
So it's not about changing your core personality, but flexing your approach.
Precisely, it's about being more intentional. The sources gave a pretty helpful 4-step process for this.
Okay, what is it?
First, observe. Just watch the person you're interacting with. What do they talk about? Body language, pace.
Step 1, pay attention.
Step 2, assess. Based on what you observed, think about those DISC axes. Are they more task or people-oriented, fast-paced or more reserved?
Okay, observe, then analyze a bit.
Step 3, recognize. Based on that assessment, make an educated guess about their probable dominant DISC style, DIS or C.
And finally,
Step 4, adjust. This is the key. Adjust your communication to match their preference, not just yours. So like we said, if you figure someone's a high C, you consciously provide more data, slow down, allow time for questions, much more effective than a quick high-energy pitch you might use with an I.
that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Observe, assess, recognize, adjust. It's about being more attuned and intentional. Okay, let's bring this back to the modern workplace. Remote, hybrid. How does DISC help navigate that better?
Well, like we touched on for each style, DISC gives really valuable insights into the specific challenges and strengths each type might face remotely.
Right, like the I needing connection, the C maybe liking the focus.
Exactly. Understanding that means you can be more deliberate about how remote teams are structured, the communication strategies you use, even how you plan virtual team building. It helps tailor the approach.
So, no one-size-fits-all for remote teams. Being aware of these DISC needs helps avoid miscommunication, builds trust.
Builds trust, improves morale, boosts productivity. It addresses the human element of remote work.
And beyond just team communication, how else is DISC used in organizations?
Oh, lots of ways. Talent acquisition is a big one. Trying to match a candidate's behavioral profile to the demands of a job.
So using it for hiring?
Yeah, validating fit, predicting success to some extent. It can also help define the ideal behavioral profile for a job, not just assess candidates against it.
Yeah.
And even in managing redeployment, understanding the fears and motivations of different styles when people have to move roles.
That's really practical. So if you're building a team or managing change, DISC gives you a useful lens.
A very powerful lens for understanding that human element. It's also used strategically in, say, business transformation. If you analyze the DISC profiles on a team, you can anticipate where resistance to change might come from.
Oh, okay.
And also how to leverage the strengths of different styles to actually drive the change forward more effectively.
And things like succession planning.
Yes, talent assessment, succession planning, comparing individual profiles against benchmark profiles for key leadership roles. It's quite versatile.
It really does seem to touch many facets of work. Now, you also mentioned a source connecting DISC and emotional intelligence, EI. How do those two fit together?
Yeah, that's a really critical link. Understanding DISC can significantly boost key parts of emotional intelligence.
How so?
Well, think about self-awareness. By identifying your own dominant DISC style, you get a much deeper understanding of your emotional tendencies, your behavioral patterns, how you likely impact others. That's huge for self-awareness, a cornerstone of EI.
Okay, so knowing your own style boosts self-awareness. What about others?
That's where social awareness comes in. Being able to recognize the DISC styles in others helps you understand their likely emotional needs, their communication preferences, how they might react. You can read the room or the person better.
And that leads to better relationships.
Exactly. That enhanced self and social awareness provides the foundation for better relationship management, another key part of EI. When you understand why someone might be acting or communicating in a certain way through that DISC lens, you can tailor your response more effectively, build stronger connections.
So DISC gives you the what, the observable behavior.
And that gives you clues to the why, the underlying motivations, priorities, potential emotional drivers, which lets you interact in a more empathetic, tailored, and ultimately more intelligent way, emotionally speaking.
This has really been quite the comprehensive deep dive into DISC. We've covered a lot of ground, the theory, the history, communication, teamwork, remote work, EI.
Yeah, hopefully it gives you, our listener, a really good shortcut to feeling well-informed about this framework. It pulls together a lot of the key ideas from the sources you sent.
And the core takeaway, it seems, is that just having this awareness of your own style, of other styles, is an incredibly valuable tool.
Absolutely. It's not about boxing people in, right? It's about appreciating the diversity and how we operate and using that understanding to communicate better, collaborate more effectively, just be more successful interacting with people.
In work and, frankly, in personal life, too.
Definitely. These patterns show up everywhere.
So, for our final thought today, maybe something for you to mull over. Think about someone you interact with regularly, a colleague, maybe, family member, friend. Based on what we've discussed, what's your best guess for their primary DISC style?
And then the provocative part. How might consciously adapting your communication, even slightly, based on that guess, impact your next interaction or the relationship overall?
Yeah, give it a try. Observe, experiment, see what happens. Understanding DISC is really a journey, isn't it? There are always more nuances.
Always more to learn about the styles and how they mix and interact. Continuous learning.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.